we're back. But do you know where you're headed next? Or how to get there? Yep, we're talking about navigation. Now, we won't go super in depth with this topic here and now because frankly, orienteering is really quite involved, and these skills often come with a significant amount of research, education, and practice. That said, you can and should have at least a base level of navigational skill before you head into the backcountry. So let's start by talking about tools, including our favorite way to navigate in the backcountry: digital maps and apps. We love tools like AllTrails, Onyx Backcountry, and Gaia for their usefulness and precision. Sure, they can help you locate interesting hikes and know what to expect via reviews and photos, like we mentioned in the trip planning lesson, but they also offer important details like hike distance, estimated time required to complete a route, elevation gain, and difficulty level. But more than that, they allow you to track your route, pinpoint your position, and even find campsites and alternate trails. Basically, apps like these make it much harder to get lost in the woods. I'm sure you can still do it, but it'll be more difficult. We almost always use one of these apps when hiking or backpacking. Even if the route is clear, familiar, or we know where we're going, it's fun to be able to see where you are, track your progress, and better estimate how far you have to go before you reach camp. Several of these apps even let you download digital maps for offline use when you don't have cell service or Wi-Fi in the backcountry, which is often. Most of them require you to purchase a pro membership to do so, but those fees are usually worth it in our opinion. That said, while we love a digital map and recommend them to every hiker, you should never just rely on a digital map when on a multi-day backcountry excursion. Why? Batteries die, especially in the cold. Phones get dropped in the water. You could lose signal, or your phone may simply stop working. So you don't want it to be the only way to navigate out of the wilderness. You should always have a paper map too. Depending on where you're headed, there are likely plenty to choose from park maps to locally produced maps, but a USGS or United States Geological Survey topographical map is always a solid choice and readily available at most outdoor stores, or you can order them online. Once you get a hold of a map, it's obviously important to know how to read it. Again, we're not going to get into every minute detail of map reading here, but there are a few map features you should absolutely be familiar with in order to plan and navigate a successful trip. Plus anticipate what's to come and, find your way. And it all starts with the map key, the little box usually in the corner of a map that details what different colors and lines mean, map info, and scale, etc. Start by looking for the map scale and check the measurement in the key that shows how far a mile is in linear distance. You will reference this measurement often when wayfinding and route planning, so know where it is. For example, an inch may represent a mile on a map. So you look at the map, measure an inch along the line that marks the trail, and voila, distance. But since trails usually aren't a straight line like a map scale key, here's a fun trick. Have a small piece of thread, string, or paracord tied somewhere to your pack or the map, a rubber band will also do, and lay it on top of the squiggly trail line on the map. Mark the beginning and end section by grabbing the string at those points with your fingers, straighten it out while holding it securely, and compare the string to the scale on the map key. Ta-da! You have a more accurate idea of how long the trail is from one point to another. Another important feature on maps is the topographical lines, or topo lines. Those are the light gray or green squiggly lines all over the map that indicate elevation change and what the landscape looks like. They're basically a 2D representation of 3D landscape. When you get good at reading topo lines, you'll be able to look at a map and tell immediately if you're hiking toward a ridge, a peak, a valley, a cliff, you name it. That's because all of the lines converge in specific directions to indicate topographical features. But more importantly, especially for beginners, they indicate elevation change. Each line, or rather the distance between them, signifies a measurement of distance. How much distance will depend on your map, so again, check the key to see if lines indicate elevation changes of something like 10 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet or more, and then you'll have an idea of how much elevation you will be gaining or losing on a certain section of trail and how quickly. How? The closer together these topo lines are on the map, the steeper the terrain and the faster you will be ascending or descending. Lines that are very close together means there's a steep slope ahead. Lines that are spaced farther apart signify a more gradual incline or decline. These lines and the directions they curve can also help you identify geological features and where you are if you get turned around. But they're also very helpful when it comes to trip planning. See, topo lines can help you anticipate how challenging a route might be and how much time it will take to complete it. A trail that goes up and down, or rather across many tightly smashed together topo lines, means you are in for a difficult hike, so plan accordingly. You'll know to pack extra food and water for the strenuous journey, set aside enough time to complete it before dark, and know that you're mentally prepared for what's to come between the trailhead and your campsite. Other map features that are important to be aware of include the compass and direction. See, maps aren't necessarily oriented with north at the top and south at the bottom. So look for the directional information, usually in the form of a printed compass that indicates how to orient your map correctly to determine north, south, east, and west. Then it's helpful to take note of directional changes as you curve down the trail throughout the day. If you have at least a rough idea of what direction you are and should be traveling, it can help you identify your place on the map. Once you get better at reading a map, you can start practicing more in-depth navigation and orienteering skills like bearing off. This will require a special orienteering compass. That level of navigational competence comes more in handy in true wilderness situations where there aren't well-marked trails or easy access to numerous trailheads, but it's still handy to know, even if you plan to stick to national parks or popular hiking areas. As for GPS units and devices, I'm gonna be honest here, I've never used them. If it makes you feel more comfortable and safe to backpack with a GPS device, then you should absolutely do what feels right for you. But unless you're going pretty far into true wilderness where there are no trails, trail markers, cell signals, or other people, it's often overkill for most adventures. But again, if you feel safer using one, I would never dissuade you from picking up a model. More important though, practice reading a map and using one at home and on day hikes to get a feel for how to decipher their meaning. Practice makes perfect, after all. And this can not only aid in planning a successful trip, but managing expectations and finding your way. Plus, it can empower you to tell rescuers where you are in case of an emergency. So whoever you are, whoever you're with, and however far you're going, learn how to read a map. Bring a paper version with you and follow along the route as you hike to practice navigational skills and map reading. You'll be a savvy map reader in no time flat. Now conquer those topo lines and wander on. Seriously, there's nothing quite like spreading out a map the first time, the hike you want to take, and looking at topo lines that are all 2 millimeters apart. Ooh, buddy. You know you're gonna be in for a treat, because that sucker's gonna be steep. But it's good to know. So, don't be afraid to look. And, maybe warn your hiking companions as well that they're in for some serious elevation change.